Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Hicks. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach with Maine Woodland Owners. We are a member-supported organization based in Augusta, but we serve the entire state of Maine. And specifically, we provide the support, expertise, and resources for folks like everybody who's watching in this video or participating today, woodland owners of all sizes. So we're glad to have people here today. We're going to be presenting one of our favorite presentations, Fireside Forestry Silviculture Q&A with Bob Seymour and Jessica Leahy. And this is a bit of a unusual format because it is simply a chance for people to ask questions and get answers from two folks who have been in the forestry world for a while in various ways, both academic and as woodland owners themselves. And I'll let Bob and Jessica talk about where they own woods quickly when they kick in here. But I wanted to just say that we're hitting the 5-year anniversary of this program. We started Fireside Forestry as an effort to stay connected to woodland owners when the COVID lockdown started. Realized we couldn't have in-person meetings.
For some reason, I'm on a Zoom app and I can't get it.
Everybody can mute, that would be great. Okay, I've just muted everybody. So I just wanted to acknowledge that March 2020 was our first programs. Like I think we've done probably 8 or 9 of these at this point.
This is I looked, it's the 11th.
Oh my gosh, thank you
How
for
about that? Yeah.
So I'm just pleased that we're able to continue doing this and that people see a lot of value in this. So let me just do a quick intro of our two panelists here, and then I'm going to hand it over to them. Bob Seymour is the Curtis Hutchinson Professor Emeritus of Silviculture, having retired from the University of Maine School of Forest Resources faculty in 2017 after 39 years of research, teaching, and service. He writes monthly in our newsletter, Maine Woodlands. So I'm sure many of you have read his column, and he collaborates with his wife, Jessica, who's here today. And Jessica is a professor of human dimensions at the University of Maine School of Forest Resources. And together they own and manage 6 woodlots, totaling nearly 700 acres in central Maine. Many of you may have attended their big event in 2021 when we were honoring them for Tree Farmer of the Year. And that was a tremendous opportunity to learn about all the practices they've put in place over the actually handful of years at that point. They were building off of the very high quality forest management that had occurred with the previous owner. And again, they can speak to that in today's conversation. And also, if you read Bob's columns and often collaborating with Jessica, you will learn about their firsthand experience working in their woods and where their woods are. So this is this hour we spend having you folks ask questions and giving Bob and Jessica a chance to offer their thoughts and to have a dialogue here. So I highly encourage everyone to jump in, ask their questions. If you feel that you'd rather send us a chat with your question, that's just fine. We'll be catching those as well and reading those out loud and answering them as well. So I'm sure I missed a bunch of things, except if you're not a member of Maine Woodland Owners, today's a wonderful day to become a member. And it's very easy, just going to our website, mainewoodlandowners.org, click on membership, and you'll see we accept online membership registration and payment. So love to have you. You get a monthly newsletter, 20-page, full color in the mail, just like the old-fashioned way. And it's a good resource. I'm the editor. I think it's a great publication. And I especially love getting articles from woodland owners, from readers, which I'm starting to get a lot of those. And I'm pleased to get those into the newsletter as well. Okay, I'm passing it over to Bob and Jessica.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for being here, and congratulations on 5 years of a really terrific service.
Yeah, well, I hope everyone is feeling like spring is arriving. I see Rich Merck here and know he is a sugar maker, so I can, thanks for taking a break probably from your sugar shack. I wanted to recognize, in addition to Jen, who's here from Maine Woodland Owners, we also have Olivia Nicholson, who's on the staff, and good to have two folks from the organization that are also resources for you. And then the other person I'd like to recognize is Louisa Kaplan. You may notice we have a early career person with us. Louisa, could you introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Well, I work with Jessica at UMaine in Orno, and I'm working on a project to write a guide to intentional native landscaping in Maine cemeteries. So basically how to make sure that cemeteries are valuable to the ecosystem and have some like native vegetation, and how to transfer a cemetery from more invasives to a more native landscape.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so Louisa's really interested in outreach, and I thought this is kind of an innovative outreach platform that we have. So I invited her to join and listen in today. And I see Rich is jumping out ahead of everybody with a chat question. So I'll read it so Bob can answer. I'm wondering if there is any prevention possible to stop the damage done by the pine weevil.
The evil weevil.
The evil weevil.
Well, before I open my mouth, I will actually note the presence of an authority on this topic, although it's many decades ago. Gordon Mott, up in it's on the upper right of my screen, did actually, when he was a scientist for the Forest Service, based in Connecticut, he studied the weevil and its control. Back when we had more lethal and durable pesticides, probably it's good that those are gone. Well, Rich, if you've been reading the newsletter, I wrote at length about this back in 2022. There's a whole article about controlling the pine weevil. You need to silviculturally, you control the weevil by growing pine in the shade and under a shelter wood, right? That's easier. So if you're starting with mature pine, then you follow the shelterwood process. The reason the weevil doesn't attack those seedlings much and saplings is because the shoot diameter is small relative to the height growth. The weevil needs big, fat, thick cambial layer. However, like if you're like us and we're doing enrichment planting in open gaps on a wide spacing, that is absolutely, the weevil is going to clobber every one of them multiple times, get them almost every year. So we just started spraying them with the pesticide that we now use is bifenthrin. So you can go. So not only should you go back, I think it's in 2022, I believe, in the summer. You can find it. I'm actually in the process. This is a news flash. I just this week got a digital commons site called Maine Silviculture and Management of Maine's Forests on the Fogler Library. And I'm in the process of putting some of these articles that I've written for the Maine Woodlands there. Mostly the compilations that were multi-part series, like the beach one I just did is like 8 articles. I put that all in one. That's there. I'll put the weevil one there too. They're also even better though. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a whole, I think it might even be a white pine weevil playlist where we show, there's at least I think 3 or 4 videos where we show the specific spray apparatus we use. This gets into the details because the problem is as these pines grow taller, it's increasingly difficult to get a spray wand that will reach up there, and you need to get up probably about at least 16 feet, 17 feet to one saw log height, right? And then you're on your own. But you can't do that. Solo does make an 8-foot telescoping carbon fiber wand. It's about $100.
And it's very fragile.
And it's fragile. We actually broke one when I tripped with a sprayer. So, but it definitely works. So you can put that on another 4-foot one and get up there 12 feet from the end of the spray wand, which is 5 or 6 feet above your head. So that all works. It's very lightweight. And the timing is absolutely critical. You have to hit those weevils right after they emerge from the forest floor, which is going to be about a month from now, down where you are, maybe a little later up here. We typically have sprayed, now we've done this 5 years, I think, or this will be the 6th
Yeah,
probably.
we rely on the
Yeah.
growing degree days.
You look at, for growing degree days, there's a website at Cornell that will give you that, about 20 or 30, that's days above 50 degrees. It's not that's not the number, that's not the metric, it's not days, it's anyway. We've actually, I figure that is one thing, but actually it's much easier just to look when the pines first start to break bud and the candle's like an inch, no more than an inch long. You need to be out there treating those things, right? Let the pine phenology tell you when to do this. And that's when the weevils, they're well synchronized with this. They'll be emerging from the duff and you'll see them out there on the hit attacking these leaders. And if you spray with the bifenthrin, you wet down that new growth as well as the whole last year's leader. That's what they're going to attack. And the adult weevils will lay their eggs in there. And then when they hatch, the larvae feed circling downwards in the girdle of the shoot and you get the shepherd's crook, right? If you do have weevil trees, you can, if they get weevil, you can do corrective pruning, cut off all but the one dominant lateral. And initially that looks like hell, but after a couple of years, that will straighten up by quite a lot. I wrote about that, I think, in my pruning article. So all that works. I think, so yes, you read the article, which I think talks about, says essentially what I just said. And then the YouTube videos will show you the details of the equipment. I just use a solo backpack sprayer with the special wands. And the bifenthrin's it's easy. It's a very dilute mixture of bifenthrin's a really broad spectrum insecticide that works on all kinds of stuff. And it you know, the old, back when Gordon was doing this work, we had lindane and other things. It was a chlorinated hydrocarbon like DDT. It lasted for a month or more. It was perfect to control the weevil, but really bad in all kinds of other ways because of that persistence. So that's gone. So now you have to, this bifenthrin will last. Do not spray it if you have a big rain like today. You would, like, if you see this weather like today coming, don't spray because it'll wash your insecticide off and you have to repeat it. So the ideal conditions are really like you got a nice several days ahead, dry weather, sunny, the weevils are going to be active. You go out there and spray that leader and they land on it. It's a contact insecticide. So it'll kill them. And we get almost 100% control now. But it's one of those things where if you sweat the details, if you do it, you know, anything doesn't come out right. If you miss the window, you're going to get some losses. It'll still be a lot better, even if you're a little late. It'll be way better than not treating.
Well, we do our corrective pruning just before 4th of July. We'll go back and we'll see if any shepherd's crooks appeared. And I'm not sure if it really helps reduce the population or not, but it definitely makes us feel better. We'll clip those and put them in a packed basket, do the corrective pruning so that a lateral branch can become the new leader. And then we take the pack basket out with all the shepherd's crook and we have a bonfire and we burn we burn the weevils up.
Boy, those dry pine leaders burn
they burn great,
like
and there's weevil eggs in there.
Dry needles on them.
It's at least makes you feel good.
Yeah, don't cut them off and leave them in the woods because then the pupae will emerge and you haven't accomplished a thing. But if you haul them off site, in fact, if you go back and read the early literature, say like from the 19 teens and 20s, this has always been a concern, right? Because white pine's always been our prominent New England species down like in the Harvard forest. They had armies of people going out there with pruners, doing this corrective pruning every year. And it was a big, you know, having big fires off-site, burning up all the weevils.
Wow.
Gordon, do you have anything
chant?
to add here? Do you remember anything about your work on the pine weevil? I'm trying to remember what you studied now. Life cycle stuff, wasn't it? You're muted.
He's working on it.
Yeah, maybe all right. There it goes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, you hear me? Basically, my wisdom became, if you want to deal with white pine weevil, grow Norway spruce. and
That'll
aside from that, if you are dealing with just a small area, chickens are a real asset.
Really?
Anything that will be
Ha,
dealing with, that's where they're wintering. But
yes.
then in nature, for
Ha,
example, in the fire area in the southern area in Baxter Park,
yeah,
where the fire was back in the 70s, the residual pine provide the seed source, and then all of the stored seed intolerance, etc., birch, poplar, and whatnot, spring up, and the pine seed germinated underneath the hardwood cover, and that
hmm,
gave the protection, the natural protection that let the first log or
yeah,
more
that's right, yeah.
develop.
That works too,
And,
actually. Yeah,
Good
yeah,
point. Yeah.
thank you.
uh,
All right.
Thank you.
David had the next question. Do you want to unmute and ask your question, David, or we could read it for you? Oh, it didn't work. Try unmuting again.
Okay,
There you go. Yeah, it
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
I would like to plant some white oak, and I was wondering uh, where would be the best source to purchase them, and is there a problem since they have that taproot? And how do you know what's the best way that's efficient of keeping the deer from eating them, browsing them?
Those are two different questions. White oak, um, I have not purchased hardwood seedlings that are not grown in the New Hampshire nursery. That's a double negative. Let me say that again. The New Hampshire only grows like red oak, I think. I don't think they grow white oak, even though white oak is native to New Hampshire. Maybe they have it in small quantities. I'm not sure. So I would look there first. That's the only state nursery left in New England, or even New York, I guess. And I think other suppliers, there's not that many other nurseries, but you would look for one as near to Maine as possible, like Pennsylvania, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably a good, so if I were doing it, and I keep meaning to do this, and I just don't have a source, I would do Fred Huntress, the departed Fred now, died a couple years ago, loved his white oak, and he would make a big, I would grow my own, right? I would collect acorns from native
Mhm.
trees or ones that, it's just even something out in your yard or on the street or in the cemetery. Go down to Deering Oaks, right? And get a bucket of acorns, make a nursery bed, and the problem, and I've done this with walnuts and other things, it's a very difficult thing to do as a kind of a home project because squirrels and chipmunks will find these nuts no matter what. I even put screen over them. They dug in under the screen. I went out in the winter after the snow melted. Oh, I'm going to have all these walnuts. I'll germinate them and I'll put up a fence. Too late. They got them all. And last year they got my chestnuts. I get chestnuts from the American Chestnut Foundation, which is very expensive, right? I put them out there with my tomatoes, and I looked out there 3 hours later, and the chipmunks had dug every one up. So, you have to be when you're growing nuts, type trees, which do have the taproot, right? The oaks and chestnut and hickory, whatever, all of those, they're high maintenance, right? So, I think I would look for a source of where are you, David? What town?
In Shapley, southern Maine.
Oh yeah, so there's plenty of white oak out there in the landscape in that region probably that you know of. And I would do like Fred, I would try to collect acorns and grow it myself, and then it's locally adapted for sure. And then protecting it from the deer, you really have to, we use those 5-foot tubes, which are expensive, right? NRCS will cost share that if you have a plan. And I think enrichment planting, this is in the climate adaptation silviculture that we're now thinking more about. That's clearly in the resilience, even at transition kind of strategy of moving species that are somewhat south of us, largely the range, but barely in Maine. That's a good thing to do. White oak is an amazing tree. I have one on my property in Kanduska that I dug up in New Hampshire 40 years ago. The thing is huge. I mean, it's a big open grown tree. I never pruned it and I didn't want to. I'm trying to, yet to have an acorn crop. I've never yet seen one on it. So I suspect, like a red spruce, for example, red spruce does not bear cones until it's older than people think, 50 probably. Same with, I think, white oak, right? It's not precocious. So I think you need the older ones, and then you get these big bumper crops. So I would start with that. There's a reference. It's called the Woody Plant Seed Manual. Okay, it's a long-standing government publication. It's been around since the 1940s.
Should be online.
I just looked at it, actually, the most recent edition. Somebody asked a question about white pine to me, so I looked it up. It's the standard Bible about how to grow trees from seed. And it's been that way for 50 or 60 years, and it's probably in the 4th or 5th edition. And it's free, it's a government publication written by all the experts. And you would find in there, you go to the genus Quercus, which is oak, right? And you will find white oak. Where probably white oak and red oak are going to be treated differently. I'm not sure. That would give you all how to germinate the seeds. Usually, most seeds in this climate need a kind of a chilling period over winter, right? The seeds are usually born in the fall. You can simulate that by putting them in cold storage, but don't freeze them. Put them in your fridge if you have like a cellar fridge or something where you keep your root vegetables. You can keep them there, or you can even, if you can harden the place outside, it's better to stratify them. It's called out in the environment and just let nature handle the chilling period, and then they will germinate. But you have to absolutely protect them from the rodents, which you'll get them.
Yeah.
Ross, do you have any experience with this? Ross Pryor's on the call here. I bet he's growing white oak.
You have a tube preference, I know.
Yes.
I've had very good luck purchasing seedlings from nurseries in northern
Okay.
Michigan.
Mhm.
Okay.
They,
Yeah, they're
they
bigger producers out there. What's the name of that one you use? Something River, right? What is it? The maybe
well, a
Chief River,
common
maybe?
commercial one is Cold Stream Farms.
Okay.
I've gotten thousands of seedlings from them. They've done very well.
Well, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, good to know.
And
I was going to point out to David some of our we get reference points as foresters, and so when you buy red oak from the New Hampshire State Nursery, if you buy enough, you pay about 50 cents per seedling. And so I do imagine you can find white oak perhaps at some of the private nurseries that are growing larger trees. They might grow, but then those places, they're charging so much for those trees and shrubs that they do, that to me that they kind of they're not at the scale that we're thinking of doing them. So that'll give you a benchmark when you think about, oh, I'm going to put this time into finding a white oak tree nearby and maybe getting a few supplies. It's because we're kind of thinking of, well, we're still going to come out at 50 cents a seedling, and that's much better than $15-20 a small shrub or small sapling that you would get out of a private nursery. And then
well, I found if you buy 50 to 100 seedlings, you could get them for under $2 a piece.
Okay, great.
Now if you buy 10, well, then they're ridiculous. But if you buy 100, they're reasonable. But that's a lot of
$2 sounds
trees.
like a lot to me. I mean, you can get
Yeah.
New Hampshire is 50 cents for red oak. If you buy 100,
100
like
or
five,
more.
I got it's 500 price.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. David, how many trees do you need? You're going to buy like 10 or 1,000 or somewhere in between?
I think more like I start out with 10 or 20 trees.
Yeah, get some
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. Well, in that case, you're going to pay, but that's so what? It's $100 worth of trees. Just plant them.
Yeah.
And keep.
Yeah.
If you're going to plant them out in the field or something, make sure you control the sod. Do not allow. They need to be free of competition. If you can do that with herbicide, or you can just put down weed mats, right? It's actually, they're even more effective than spraying because they last for years. You don't have to retreat. So
yeah, I was going to say a little bit about planting. So Bob and I have planted thousands of mostly white pine and red oak, and I love planting the oak over the pine. Some of it is that taproot is really nice. When you get them from the New Hampshire State Nursery, they've been trimmed, so it's
Yeah, they
mostly
root
just
prune them.
yeah, just the taproot. So Bob will actually kind of just put the shovel in the ground and kind of lever it a little bit and kind of make a slit versus a
Yeah.
hole, and then you slide the root in. And the key with that is you want, you know, the root pointed down and the tree part pointed up. When you do
Yeah.
white pine, you get this, you know, root constellation, and so you have to dig a bigger hole, and then you have to be much more careful not to have what's called J rooting,
yeah.
where if the root accidentally bends up, it can cause
Yeah,
short-term
that
and
goes away.
long-term issues. And then on both of them, once you get that root well positioned in the ground, the key is to eliminate all of the air space, because that will dry the roots out. You want to get the soil compact and right around it, so you kind of push there. And so I think planting oak is easier than the white pine, and we have pretty good success if the deer don't eat it. So
Yeah,
then that leads
yeah,
to the
they'll
other.
eat them. Especially white oak is like candy to the
Yeah.
deer. They love
And
them. Yeah.
the other thing is, unlike the advice that Bob gave Rich about the pine weevil and not spraying for pine weevil right before a rain, you actually do want to plant right before a rain, or even better is to plant in the rain.
Today'd be a fact.
So,
Yeah, do not let your seedlings dry out under any conditions, but do not put them in water either.
Yeah.
That will suffocate the
They'll
roots.
drown them,
Just
yeah.
keep them moist, right?
Yeah.
Peat moss or
Okay.
even a towel or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever.
The other tip is, if you can't plant them right away, you still want to keep the roots moist and covered, so you can make a temporary bed for them and cover them up with soil,
Right.
and keep them moist and dark, and then you can that'll give you a few more days to try to get it out into the ground.
You're going to be probably reading about tree planting, because we have, I think, 100 red oaks coming and 800 red spruces that we're going to plant on that liquidated parcel we bought north of Wickapee Woods. That's going to be a several-day effort, and we'll see how that goes. It's hard to buy red spruce. You have to tack on. You get really nice stock, but you have to tack on now to one of the large landowners. So I did that through Seven Islands. They come in bags of 400, and they're little plug seedlings. They're not bare root, so easy to plant.
Even easier.
But you can't, like, you need kind of special access. You have to buy. You couldn't just buy 50 of these things. Ross could do it probably. You could get them from another place, but it's the same nursery. So
I mean, I could invite everyone to come plant. If you want to learn how to plant a tree, you could come. No, I'm kidding.
talk about a job that gets old fast. It's like firefighting, right? It's like, oh, this is fun. And then about 3 hours into it, you realize it's really hard work and repetitive. And it's just,
A good way to learn the soil types on your woodlot, though.
Right.
The more holes you dig all over the place, the more you really get to see those differences in the different soils.
Well, it's instant gratification though. You put a tree in the ground, it's like painting your house, or like we were just talking to Joe Roy has a thing coming out, and I tell you, like pulling honeysuckle this time of year. As soon as those little honeysuckle leaves come out, the roots, you can yard them right out of the ground. You can't do that later when the soil dries out. Not big bushes. I'm talking about stuff this, 2 feet tall. Man, yard them right out by the thousands if you're just taking a walk in your woodlot. But that's one of those things where you got to like maybe a 2 or 3 week window before the soil dries out into May, where you can do that, and you can still see the honeysuckle, right? Because it's leafed out before everything else. Perfect. So tree planting's like that. Yeah, make sure that you want moist. You do not let the roots dry out, and keep them shaded if you have to. Plant them as the Max McCormick, our late lamented Max now, sadly, and that is very sad. What's the one rule of storing tree seedlings? He would say in his powerful voice, "Don't do it. Plant them. Don't leave them sit around or they're going to die." Right. So that was Max, and he's right.
Good to quote
Like
him.
he was on pretty much everything. So silviculture.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I see Ralph has a couple of questions. How are you doing, Ralph?
Yes. Hello. How are you? Hold on.
Hi.
I'm going to try to get my
Yeah.
video on here. All
Yep,
right.
there you are.
Hi. Thanks for doing this again. I appreciate your
Sure.
time. And I have two questions if I could ask them.
Mhm.
One of them, Bob, I know you've addressed this before, but I don't remember exactly what you said. I
Mhm.
have a lot of diseased beech that I want to harvest for firewood, and it's just too much. It's impractical for me to really spray them. They're like on the far corners of my property, and I don't know what I'm doing with pesticides anyway. I'm like a city slicker trying to learn all this. So I just want to cut them. And I remember, but you know, they stump sprout so vigorously. But I remember you said something in the past, like if you cut them like at breast height or something like that, then they'll just put out one shoot as opposed to a whole bunch of like suckers from the roots. Am I on the right track?
No,
Did you say
that
something
no,
like that?
no, that's a myth. You do not, high stumps have no positive effect. They can be negative, right? That does not work. So where to start here? So if you want those not to, and these are trees in the main canopy. The only case where you can actually cut a beech tree and have it not sprout, mostly, are shaded saplings in a shaded understory that are not very vigorous. And you have to do that, another timing thing, you have to do that in mid-August. That was if you read back through the beech articles I just published, it would be in the one it has timing in the title. There was a graph in there that showed that. So if you cut saplings shaded, otherwise they're gonna sprout. This is where the herbicide is essential. So if you're going to just cut these trees and not do anything, then they're going to sprout. That's simple. So, but I would strongly urge you to go out and try the drill and fill technique that I wrote about, which is just really easy and uses almost zero herbicide. Where you put in one hole per 2 inches of diameter in the beech trees. You use I do use the 20% glyphosate solution in water for beech because it's just lethal on beech. And you just drill these holes in. I drilled, what was it? If you go to my YouTube channel, you see a video of this. It's now got 1,700 views. I wrote about it in a special article about half a year ago or something. That's your best bet. That's by far the most efficient way. You can kill the trees before you cut them, right? This is the key. You just go out there you can do, 300 about 250 holes per hour, roughly. I think we timed ourselves and did this a couple of times, 200, 300. So that's like hundreds of trees, right? Little trees. So you drill in there, you just go watch this and you'll see what I'm doing. You drill down a little bit, 45-degree angle, put the herbicide. You need the special Husqvarna sprayer and a good cordless drill that will, 4 amp battery that lasts all day, powerful, and a 5/16 maple tapping bit, right? That's the right size, and that's designed to drill into a hardwood tree. So you just drill in there, fill a hole 1 inch deep, fill a hole with herbicide. Do that every 2 inches of diameter. Those beeches will all be stone dead, and they will not sprout. And you will spend almost, that will go so fast you'll be amazed at how efficient it is. And then you can cut them anytime you want, right? They're dead. And if you're just cutting them for firewood, so what, right? You can do this. We do it. The University Forest does this. It's probably even more efficient to spray the stumps when you cut them. So if you're going to do the cutting yourself, just take a bottle of glyphosate out there with you and spray the stump. Then that's it, right? That's even more surgical. Some people, though, can't. You have to do that within about 4 days of cutting the tree. After that, the stump will dry out and won't work, right? The drill and fill you can do anytime because you're doing it on a standing tree that's alive and you're trying to kill it. So we have, like, for example, our forestry staff on the university, we have some land up in Aroostook County. We have a contract timber sale up there. We cut a bunch of beech. We're not going to be around. Nobody's going to be around to spray those stumps, right? We're not going to drive up there from Orono just to do that. So we just sent a crew up there. We sent two workers to two of our foresters and technician. They went up there. They spent 1 day. They did 20 acres. They killed all the beech trees in 1 day. And then Prentice and Carlisle came in and harvested that beech. No sprouts, right? For 2 days, for 2 man days of work with a little bit of herbicide. Incredibly efficient. So
there's nothing like if you Now I know they'll sprout, but I thought if you cut them at a certain height, they would only sprout from the stump as opposed to sending up all kinds of hundreds of root suckers.
That may be true, but yeah, you're still going to have those stumps. Those sprouts can be vigorous, though, right? So I do not think is an effective strategy. Is like,
Ralph, you're kind of combining two things that I've heard out there. One is the height of the stump and the stump sprouting, but the other, I have heard what you're saying, and so I'd like Bob to talk about the literature because I don't know it either. But what I've heard people say is if you have like 8 large beech trees, and they're probably all either related or root connected, that if you leave one of them and you cut the other 7, that it will send its energy to the remaining live tree and it won't sprout. Does the literature support that?
That is supported, yes.
Okay.
That is a way, if you want to leave some beech trees, like if you want to cut 4 out of 5, say, I'm just picking, these are just, we're 9 out of 10, most of them, but not all of them, and leave a single, it would have to be a dominant tree, a big, healthy, vigorous beech tree. That will, as Jess said, because they're all root grafted below ground, that will tend to inhibit the suckering. This definitely works. This is a common practice in aspen management. In the lake states, Ross probably knows more about this than I do, but they do a lot of just simple coppice or sprout management of aspen. If you leave just like 10 aspen trees per acre, you will really reduce the density of your root suckering for the aspen. So that can either be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what your objective is, right? Yeah. And the same is going to be true with the beech. Any of these root grafted species, that's right.
And I kind of like
you got to be careful. And the corollary to this is if you want to protect a disease resistant beech, you got a nice smooth bark beech and you're cutting diseased beech nearby. Do not treat those stumps there because that healthy tree can suck the herbicide right through the root system and kill it. I've actually done this myself. You get into a mow where you're spraying stumps and you don't realize, I left a resistant tree right here 15 feet away, and it will kill them. I've done that twice, actually, embarrassingly. That happens to the best of them. But so that is the reverse example. Leave that tree, and I wouldn't guarantee it would completely, reduce all sprouting, but it will help. Definitely help.
I mean, the other thing to think about is, beech makes a great firewood, and it doesn't have super commercial value, and so some people can look at it pretty, with a keen eye for receiving the saw, but it does have wildlife value because it's a mass-bearing tree, and there's other good ecological reasons that you may want to keep some of those really big, vigorous
Oh, no
ones.
question. Yeah.
As beech leaf disease is becoming more common. It's probably not where you are, but it is moving through the state. And so switching from a real negative view towards beech and then adding a little bit more conservation lens to it now that we know that it's threatened by this new nematode.
It's interesting that you bring this up because I'm in the process right now of almost done with it. I'm next week at the New England Society of American Foresters meeting down in Massachusetts. I'm giving a 30-minute talk on beech silviculture in the context of this new beech leaf disease, right? And it's essentially it's a presentation version of those 8 articles that I've tried to put into about 25 minutes. That will the end of next week, that will be on my YouTube channel. So you should I'll record it before I don't think they're going to record the actual live one, but I'll do a test and I'll record it and put it up. But the stuff is, and then this digital commons page that I mentioned, that series of beech articles is also there now. You can go download this and reread it if you don't want to go back into your own printed issues of the stuff I wrote about a year ago now. So it's all there. And there's a lot of mythology about beech. And that is one of them. The high stump thing, like landowners have gone out with their fellow bunchers. Oh, cut, they call it whipping, where they go down with the harvester, mechanical harvester, and cut off all the beech saplings in the understory, cut them high, right? That is the worst thing you can do, because what you end up doing, and this has been shown, Ralph Nyland has shown if you do that, what happens, especially you do it in the winter, you often cut them above the lowest live branch and they just turn up. You don't even kill the tree, right? It just doesn't do anything, really. It just regrows. In fact, cutting them, the lower, the better, because you're more likely to cut them below the lowest live branch. There's no physiological reason to cut them high. Now, if you look at our pictures and our work where we've gone with our backpack saw and or whatever, and cut these, which is another tremendous way to get rid of beech saplings. We cut them high only because we're going to spray those stumps, and it's just ergonomically easier to cut them high and then spray them high. You have to bend over. But that's not done for any physiological reason. It's just that the workflow is better. And that you're doing this drill and fill, you're doing the same thing. You're drilling them right at waist high, right? Where you can read the drill. You don't have to go down to the stump. That the drill and fill, I think we've now is our go-to, even though we love that saw. The drill and fill is a lot easier. You're only carrying like a 1 pound drill. You may have an extra battery if you're going to work all day, instead of a 35-pound saw and gas and bar oil. Both are extremely efficient though. There's this, so if you're going to cut beech trees for firewood, kill them first with the drill and fill, and then as long as you cut them. Now beech rots out pretty quickly. You'd want to do it within a year probably, otherwise they're going to start to bark will slough off and this and that. And you can do it year round, doesn't matter what time of year you do it.
But I can also just cut them first, like as I go, right, and then spray the stump.
Yep.
You have to do that. Yeah, that's where the timing is really critical. You have to do it
4
within,
days.
yeah, right. I would just take a spray bottle with me and spray them just after you cut them. Put a little dye in the spray so you can see where you've treated. You get
That would give
used.
you more firewood because you would cut them as low as possible.
right, yeah. You would want to cut them
And-
a little first.
But the timing matters for that method, for the stump, like treating the stump.
It works, not the seasonal timing. It works year round, but the time, the
4 days after you cut
within
it.
4 days.
Right.
There's been a couple studies that have shown that, right? After 5 days, the efficacy drops off.
Yeah, I would think I would just, I guess, do it at the same time, like
Yeah.
cut
Yeah,
it.
that's right. Yeah.
Part of your
A
workflow.
couple of foresters I know had chainsaw hand crews that would do that. Bill Mahan had a logger that did it for years. He was a licensed applicator, actually. He just carried some kind of spray bottle with him. Anytime he cut a beech tree, he'd just spray it. That was it. Simple. I mean, he paid him, $1 a tree or something to do that, right? It was well worth it because, then he didn't have a big mess afterwards. This
Yeah,
is
right.
stump spraying is the most underrated practice. If foresters and managers have been spraying stumps for the last 20 or 30 years, we wouldn't have this huge beech problem that everybody keeps talking about in northern Maine. It wouldn't be there. We've known that this is true for 40 years, and yet this is a good example of not applying things we know work just because, I don't have time to spray stumps. It's the most efficient thing you can do. You go through, we've done this after a harvest routinely. It's like you're done before you know it. That takes no time at all to walk through. You want to go out and look right after the harvest anyway, right? See what's going on. Just take a sprayer with you and see, come to a beech stump, spray it. It's dead and it won't sucker. And then you don't have all these problems later. So
And that's something with 20% glyphosate.
yeah, I buy that stuff at Tractor Supply and dilute it by half. Right, the FarmWorks product. Yeah. That's all in the article when you go back and look at it.
And before we switch to another topic, Ralph, you said you were kind of new to herbicides, and so the Board of Pesticide Control has some really good trainings. The other important advice is just to always read the label of whatever you've purchased and to look at what the recommended PPE is for it. So with the glyphosate, it's to protect your hands with some gloves and to have some eye
definitely wear eye
protection.
protection. I mean,
So definitely don't go out and buy it and rip the label off and go willy-nilly on it. Just but reading the label, looking at the PPE. I went through the process and became a private pesticide applicator, and that to me was really helpful to kind of go through some of that training, even though that gives me the ability to buy more than anything I would ever use. I can buy restricted chemicals, but I'm just probably not. But I like the education.
And where are the
Oh,
articles?
if you Google Silviculture and Management of Maine's Forests, but I can also email it to you. Ross, we have to talk about hop hornbeam. I love that tree. I make Bob leave that tree. I wouldn't get rid of it.
Well,
Ironwood.
um,
Right. So Ross put in the chat for the recording. Does drill and fill work on hop hornbeam?
I would think that it's in the birch family. I don't have any personal experience with it. Drill and fill will work on everything if you use the right herbicide. I could go into a long story about how we thought it'd be very easy to go out and do some spruce fir pre-commercial thinning with this drill and fills. It was kind of like this 30-year-old stand where nothing was merchantable, but it was a little bit big for a brush saw and our backpack saw. So we'd just go drill them, right? Kill them. We go back after 2 months and all the red spruce are standing there perfectly green. They're completely resistant to glyphosate. The fir were stone dead from this glyphosate beach treatment, but the spruce just were happy as a clam with holes in, right? But not dead. So we spent all the summer. That was about then, it was midsummer before we realized this. We then went out to a local place where I knew there were some spruce trees, and we tried various things. Finally, I realized Tordon will kill spruce, but it doesn't kill fir. So now what are we going to do, right? You don't want to go out there with 2 different chemicals just to do this. I mean, so we just finally put out a mix of the 2, which you can do. And we're going to see if that works. I don't do both species. So it's,
well, we're down to 10 minutes. Would
who's next?
someone
Is
like to
anybody
jump
else?
in with a question?
Who we got here?
I don't know.
Jonathan, did you want to jump in? I saw you unmuted.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I just got here, just got home, so
Oh, welcome.
I'm
Well,
not in
good.
a position to ask questions.
Okay.
I don't know where you started.
Well,
Oh, we've been all over the place.
It doesn't matter. If you have a
what's on your
question, just
mind?
answer it,
Yeah.
right? This is kind of stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Flow here.
Where's your land?
Town of St. George,
Okay.
38 acre tree growth property.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Our last harvest was for fir, was about 30 years ago. We're
Mhm.
trying to bring out the spruce now.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
got some of the moosewood striped maple, the red maple, and the
Mhm.
birch are getting high, but I don't think there's any value to the birch.
White birch?
Yes,
Yeah. Well, you can sell it for pulpwood, probably firewood.
Yeah.
firewood, yeah, use it for firewood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. No.
Yeah. Well, okay. Is it white spruce? Probably down there. It's probably white spruce, not red.
Yes,
Could be either, actually. Yeah. White
Well,
spruce.
so I'm thinking of planting. In the thinner areas, I'm thinking of planting, and I'm also thinning out the spruce that has come back, because I think that'll be the next crop.
Yeah, do you have, okay, if you have I worry about white spruce as being climate adapted. If you look at the article I just published about the Wikipedia Wood story, when Ron Locke bought that
I
property
did, yes, I
In,
did
uh,
read that, thank you.
47 years ago, 40% of the stocking was white spruce and white birch and these, what are quasi-boreal tree species. Back then, the climate was colder and they were probably better adapted. That's a legacy of the old field abandonment, which is probably the same thing you got, old sheep pasture, right, from the 1800s. So what that article showed is when I looked at our data, it's like, well, gee, I mean, we cut a lot of the big old ones and they were just not healthy. We left some residual, like 8, 12-inch white spruce. Half of them blew off the first windstorm, they went over. And the ones that are still out there as residuals, when we remeasured our plots twice now, they're almost not growing. So I really worry about white spruce, and I don't know whether it's climate or whether it's some other malady. White spruce, I think, is fussy. It's well known for coming in on old fields, growing really well for about 40 years, and then just crapping out, right? Reputed from nutrient depletion, and that could be a problem. White spruce is a more site demanding species than the red spruce. So I would not, if I were you, Jonathan, I would not necessarily place a lot of faith in the white spruce. Red spruce would probably be a good bet down there. If you have white pine, certainly there, unless you're right on the seacoast.
Yes, it is on the water, it's the end of the peninsula, there's not a lot of soil, and I think that.
Well,
affects
that's
how
true of a
well
lot of that land down there. I think white pine right on the saltwater is not good because it's not salt tolerant.
Yeah, they don't live that well in.
Yeah, so you want the red spruce for that probably. It'd be the best bet that That's yeah, those coastal forests are um I think red spruce is the what I would go with if you have any. Favor that and try to find some planting stock if you could. New Hampshire does grow red spruce. That usually they just don't grow near enough of it to meet the demand, and they sell right out. So
Yeah, they've got really good stuff. They have wildlife shrub mixes that you can get as well, in
Yeah.
addition to tree
Yeah.
species.
yeah,
Now, who is that?
New
the
Hampshire.
New Hampshire State Tree Nursery.
I've used them before, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you can get red spruce from them, that's what I'd go with. You could probably try
Okay.
some pine, but yeah,
Mm.
yeah, good.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy, what's going on in your woodlot world? And I see Stefan Giggy on here. Is that the Mr. Giggy who's going to be a Master of Forestry student? We have a Giggy coming, I believe.
Oh, what was that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just asking what was going on in your woodlot world, and then I was talking to Stefan as well.
Not much is going on. I applied for NRCS cost share grant for some PCT on just like 30
Yeah.
acres and some CSP money, but that may
Yeah.
all be I don't know what's going to happen to all that. Probably
Remains to be seen.
Yeah,
Yes.
I talked to one of the conservationists there just yesterday about a plan that we just submitted. And I think it seems to be business as usual for things like management plans and simple practices. We just got paid for another plan. We just wrote a big one for Wikipedia Woods that got paid for. So I don't know.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
another
I would.
thing, yeah.
My
Another
attitude, it's like if you don't try, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
right,
So,
right.
I'll not get anything done.
It's true.
So,
And they can save the application apparently.
yeah, that's right. And the problem you may run into is like a big thing. There's a lot of NRCS money has been out there and people gearing up to spend it and had been.
Right. Mhm.
And there's a shortage there's no workforce to do the treatments, right? Or it's an inadequate workforce. So it'll be interesting to see who you recruit. Are you going to do your own 30 acres? That's going to be a big project.
No. Have you ever heard of Felix Palencia? Palencia Forestry, I think. He does he's done all of my work. I did
Okay.
100 acres 2 years ago. So
All right, well then that's good. All right.
And
Good luck with the funding. It's generous now. That's a lot of money for a pre-commercial thing. It's like $500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I also have some apple trees that I'd like to just release. They're they're surrounded by taller trees. And then I also am talking with Renoster about carbon sequestration.
Yeah.
I have an application. It sounds like they're still courting people who might want to offset their carbon footprint, probably out in California. I don't know how that's going to go.
I think,
but,
we talked to them. I think those are the buyers. I think they're
buyers, right?
You and I are potential sellers, right? And
yes.
yeah, they have yet a different angle, and and it's we have submitted our lands to them, and we haven't really heard one way or the other. Positive.
The question, right?
Want to go after people that have a history of harvest. In fact, Elias had said that they won't take anybody that doesn't have that.
Right. And I certainly do.
Yeah, right. So
the question I have, I called my the assessor, the town assessor. I wanted to know if having my land in tree growth is going to be a conflict of interest, or how if there's any concern at all about.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's one that Maine Woodland owners is aware of and has been on top of. And so there was a bill before the legislature last session related to clarifying it. And rather than move it forward as a bill, they moved it to where the Maine Forest Service and the Maine Revenue Service would get together and provide clarification to landowners about this. And the last update I got was in the fall, that they were working through that process, and I don't think they've released that. And so that would be, you know, I might direct that inquiry also to the Maine Forest Service. That could give them a little nudge to get Maine Revenue Service and them to get that guidance out. It's going to be really helpful for tax assessors and for landowners to get the clarification. So if it's unclear, it's because that has not come out, but the two state agencies are working on that exact issue.
I think the consensus has become that carbon, as long as you're following the provisions of the tree growth law, in other words, you're harvesting, right? You're in the commercial forest business. You can sell all the carbon you want, right? Now, you could not therefore put your deal with one of the carbon vendors that requires you to put it in a reserve. That would obviously be in default. But somebody like Renoster and a lot of the others that encourage management at some level, I think the ruling is that what's wrong with that, right? As long as so the tree growth stands apart. Now, creating the more controversial thing would be to consider carbon as a forest product in the list of the things in the tree growth law. I think there's a lot of resistance to that, and I think I might actually agree with that resistance. It's just a different thing. That would be, we maybe should pass another law that would make that you could have another kind of preferential tax if you were in a carbon program, but that's a different thing. That gets it all muddy, and I think that could even threaten. I need to keep the tree growth tax law just as it is. It's good. It allows us to own our land and pay the taxes and manage. So I don't want to threaten that. So I think, so as long as you're in good faith in the tree growth law, I don't think there's going to be any problem with the carbon sale. Right.
I see that we're out of time, so we should wrap up. I would like to remind everybody that the Maine Woodland Owners is searching for a new executive director. Those applications are open now. So if you know anyone who would be a good applicant, please make sure that they hear about it. And I'll hand it back to Jen.
Thanks.
Can I say one thing? This is just a quickie. Last week I gave a talk to the National Tree Farm people, the American Forest Foundation in Portland. Their meeting was, and the subject was Wikipedia Woods. It's the 3 articles that you've read one of them. The second one is about to come out, and then there'll be a third one on carbon. I packaged all that in a 40-minute presentation for that group, and it's now I just got the video back from it yesterday. I just put that on my YouTube channel yesterday, so you can actually watch that if you want to. It's the same story, the same visuals with a lot more elaboration of the, Ron Locke's history and the other interesting part of that whole story arc and that property. And it's a profoundly good news story. I mean, the land has been productive. It's made money. It's sequestered, the way I put it, 780 pounds of carbon per acre per year on 128 acres for 47 years. So that is just a positive, that's a great carbon footprint. And half of that is because of the storage and the long-term products, right? The other half is in the standing trees, right? That's even a better part of the story for me. So it's all there, and you'll get that. That'll be in probably the May issue of Maine Woodlands. You'll read about that same, if you want to wait for that. So,
and we think a lot of Maine woodlots that have been stewarded by Maine Woodland owner members are probably very similar, but thanks to Ron Locke's foresight as an early owner of the property and his inventories and our inventories, we have measured trees. We estimate between the two ownerships 100 days worth of forest inventory, and so we're able to document just what that story is. But we think it's representative of a lot of folks who have cared for their land. Okay, she'll let you wrap up.
Great. There are a lot of resources that were discussed in today's meeting. I've written down as much as I could catch, and and then Bob and Jessica, if there's anything else you'd like me to add to my list, and then I'll email everybody who registered for this program, and I'll connect them to the YouTube video that this will become, and that way people will have will have the resources that were discussed and maybe even more. We try to be the source of all things information.
And my email address is in every article, and I welcome people reaching out with
Yeah.
questions. Or if something isn't clear, I can point you in a direction. So please do that.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
And
Good
I
to see
don't
you
think
all.
we probably
you.
won't do this again until the fall.
Yeah, that's fine.
but
Yeah, we'll have a busy
I'd like
summer
to
in
think we
Woodland.
could get some sort of field event with Bob and Jessica this
Yeah.
2025. So we'll see what we can do as well with that. Thank you so much for everyone being here, and have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully
Good
the
to
sun.
see you all. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. This is a great pleasure to do this. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.